Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place where we share creative and inspiring learning in our schools. Season 3, Episode 39. Hello and welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast with me, Mark Taylor. And today I'm delighted to welcome back Peter Cansell, who's our education expert, and having listened through to our Season 3 and what the children think about their schooling, he's come on to give us his thoughts and his insights and explore some of the themes that I think have come up during the season. So welcome back, Peter, and thanks for joining me again.
Hello, Mark. Nice to hear again.
So, well, let's start off. What was your initial thoughts of some of the things that you've heard and things that struck you?
Well, I think that you're too modest to mention that the Season 3 seemed to start with an interview of you by Bruce Langford. So I think we should just talk a little bit about that first of all, because I've got another question for you.
Okay.
You talked about how you got into teaching into schools and things, but what interested me was what caused you to focus on primary for a lot of the work that you do. Is there an underlying reason for that, or is it just the way it worked?
There's a couple of reasons, I guess. One is the fact that I believe that age group is where we can make the most difference. So in terms of, if you see a child in reception or in year one, they're so full of excitement, they're running around the playground, literally the world is their oyster. And I like the fact that if we just change how we go about some of the teaching that we do, or if we understand that that's what their natural makeup and we adjust our thoughts accordingly, we can just allow that process to continue. So rather than sort of changing who they are, we just allow them to be more of who they are for longer. So that by the time they get to year 6, when they're doing their SATs, their focus isn't on the fact that, oh my God, this is my exam year. It's the fact that I've had, 7 years at school, which I've enjoyed and I've loved and I've flourished, and now I'm ready to expand into my secondary school. So I think I quite like the fact that I can see real positive change there. Rather than fixing a problem, we can actually just allow what the children's natural positivity and affinity with life already is. So I think that's why I like the primary side of it. The other reason is that I was teaching in a primary school as well when I was doing some of my drum stuff and some of my samba workshops, and because secondary schools, certainly a few years ago, I know it's slightly different now because the curriculum has changed in secondary as well as primary, but we had the opportunity to give primary schools something which they might not have a specialist for. So most secondary schools have a music teacher, so therefore they'd have a curriculum, they would hopefully have an ensemble and maybe a choir and that kind of thing, as long as they had a music teacher there. Whereas primary schools didn't necessarily have a specialist person there, so that was a skill that I was able to bring in and support the school with.
A man after my own heart. I hoped you'd say something like that. That was exactly what I was thinking. That it is about that. If you can capture them when they're young and inspire them with music, that and with all sorts of other things, that's half the job's done just by the fact that you've got them when they're young, and they are so much more responsive. It seems to me, in a lot of ways, and uninhibited. But so that was lovely, and yeah, you're right. In my school, I actually brought in a music specialist because I thought it was so important that the children were getting that rich experience, which they got loads of that, and the quality of performing arts generally in the school was really high because we had this expertise coming in from him and other people, and the guy that I brought in was in fact originally from the Oxfordshire Music Service. And it struck me when you were talking about how valuable the music services have been in schools. And I don't know where yours was, whether it was a county one or what, but you were talking about county youth orchestras and that sort of thing, which are run by the music service in the local authorities, aren't they? And to have maintained those has been such a valuable thing for the arts, I think, over the years.
Absolutely. I mean, the county I grew up was Avon in the West Country, which now doesn't even exist. It's now part of Bath and North East Somerset, I think. So
and Gloucestershire.
And Gloucestershire, yeah. So there was a kind of a natural dissolution of it, if you like, and that was sad because not only were the ensembles incredibly high standard, the whole setup was in place. I mean, really at its peak. I mean, it really was fantastic. And as I said in that Bruce Langford interview, you know, it's just seeing the stepping stones of where you are. You know, I was a young person in a school, but within just hearing things happening at the school and then seeing them going on to an ensemble in a county and going on to music college and being in the music profession, you know, you could see all of those things, but that's only because behind the scenes the county had all those things in place to enable that to happen. So, and that was really key. And it's also really interesting because, you know, season 4, which is about to start in September, is going to be all about music in the arts, and I'm going to be talking much more about how we can support teachers do that. So if you haven't got a music specialist, we're going to give you some resources and some ideas of how to go about that, and also then develop it through from creating ensembles, creating worksheets, being able to have lots more singing going on, and then being able to get a specialist in if you need it. So it's all going to be very exciting for that.
It just struck me. It just struck a chord with me. The whole business of how we provide for children. But I thought it was interesting that your interview, that interview with Bruce, referred to something about you, which came through in the whole of the rest of the series, actually, which is about your passion for education that was referred to, and it struck me that what you were talking about was about being in your element. You found the right thing for you, and you were in your element. And it all smacks of a book, and I don't know if you know a book by Ken Robinson called The Element.
Absolutely, yes. I've read it many times.
Which it just reflected, you know, the thoughts in there. It just seemed to be so linked to that, and so relevant to the points that he's making. So those things came through, I thought, actually later on in the series as well.
Yeah, I think that's true, and certainly for me, I think one of the biggest takeaways from the season has been that while children don't necessarily know what they do want, because I thought my, you know, question 1, for example, I thought was going to be, you know, if you could create your classroom, you know, how would you like it to be? I was expecting to hear, yes, I want it to be, you know, like a circus tent, and I want to be able to run around, and I want to be able to jump, and I want to play football, and, you know, I thought it would be literally off the wall, you know, what would I like to do? But the thing that came across is the fact that children's perception, they hear school and they only know what they know. And it's a classroom, and it's tables, and it's a naughty side, or a people that need help side, or you know. And I thought it was really interesting that even in the primary years, that they already couldn't get past. You know,
we've already brainwashed them.
Yes, exactly. As sad as that sounds, I think that's very true, and it was quite hard to get past that. And I think what I thought about that was that I felt like an even bigger obligation to realise that actually the environment of the school is the most important thing. From my chatting with the children at Overstone, you know, they seem to really thrive on the activities that they had there and the scope that they had. But I thought, it's the atmosphere of that school that's made that possible. There are technical things, you know, about being a leader and all that kind of thing, but it's the atmosphere that comes across which is really important. And I just thought it's a really key thing. I mean, I have a friend who works in Thailand, and it's an international school, and I think they have a very free reign of what they do, which seems to work really well for the younger years. There's lots of playing, there's lots of exploration, but what they don't have is the structure later on, because I think they might sometimes find they have key areas of learning which they haven't developed because they've not naturally got there. We have at the moment the opposite, where there's so much structure and not very much scope to explore, and so therefore that whole creativity side of people is not developing in that same way. And I just thought that's the obvious balance that we need to create, is an environment of learning which you can just explore, but we need to be the adults, we're the teachers, we're the people that can create that overall umbrella of understanding what's needed, being able to guide the whole process but still give them time. And I think that's the thing that also came across, that they need time just to then literally get into the subject they're doing or explore more about what it is, but with a bit more guidance rather than now we're doing this piece of work, now we're doing that piece of work, and not having the chance to join all those dots up.
You're right. What struck me was the conservatism with a small c of the children, especially in the classroom design. And if you'd asked me that question, I said, well, we wouldn't start from here. We wouldn't start with a classroom. We wouldn't start with a school. We'd start in a totally different place. And yet, they were saying, well, we'd have the tables there and we'd have the chairs here. I thought it was fascinating, exactly like you. And I went through this a few years ago when we were designing new classrooms from our school, and we talked a lot. I talked with the staff a great deal and the children about the colours of the walls for new classrooms. They were all being decorated, so we talked about what colours they should be. And this whole thing about whether they should be bright or pastel colours was fascinating. The children, exactly like the children at Overstone, said they should be bright, they should be happy and joyful and all that sort of thing. And the teacher was saying, no, if you make them too bright, they're too distracting and they're too, and they make them too excited. I think the children enjoy it too much. It was quite interesting. I looked at what's the best learning environment for children or for anybody, and probably pastel colours are better.
Right.
You're settled, and if you think about it, you're in a pastel coloured room. You're more settled in, and blues and greens and that sort of thing have an important aspect, as opposed to bright yellow or bright pink. Children love those colours, but as they were saying, but it struck us. We ended up doing pastel ones because that's what we took the educational reason. But what they were talking about was also outside areas and access to different sort of activities. And it struck me that what they were describing was an early years classroom, where you have that in and out, a good early years classroom where it's possible to just go without even thinking, be inside or outside and doing whatever you want to be doing, or the activities that are set up. And exactly as you seem to be envisaging a good classroom, as you often talk to the children, wouldn't you like it to be so you could go outside?
Exactly, it's very difficult not to lead them in a certain direction. But yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. But I thought the whole thing was very revealing about the school, because they were obviously very comfortable with the way it was set up, and I guess that's because it's really good and they love being there, or it might just be that it's all they know. I think there's an element of that there. But they just wanted things where they were as they were. A little bit of extra PE, extra breaks maybe, bit of cross-phase work, different ages, but no cross-curricular stuff they talked about. And that was true about all of the children that you talked about. I found that whole thing, even though you pressed them into talking about projects, in one case, I think it was towards the end of the series, the children were saying, projects are great. And when you pushed that, it was a project about science, a project about English, a project about maths.
Absolutely.
Exactly. But I bet those schools are doing cross-curricular things. I bet they're doing all sorts of stuff like that, like you described about your children's school, where they did the sale of things for raising funds.
Yes.
And that is totally cross-curricular, and yet children divide it down into different subjects. I remember years ago, this was a long time ago, when I was a very young teacher in a very enterprising school with a forward-thinking head teacher, and we used to have a week which had an alternative curriculum where everybody. We didn't call it this, but they did cross-curricular projects. And halfway through the week, I was talking to some children. I think they were year 6 children, year 7 children, maybe. It was a middle school. And I was asking them what they thought about it. And they said, it's really great. We're really enjoying it. There was a sort of carousel of activities, and they got different teachers to do all sorts of different things. But it was all around the same theme. And they said, we're really loving it. And I said, well, is there anything that you don't like? And they said, because we're not doing any English. Well, these children were translating scripts from texts from the Bible and other old documents taking the original document and trying to make sense of it and writing it out and then doing a report on it. And when I said to them, well, you're doing all this stuff, you're doing your handwriting, and you're doing, you're reading lots and lots of stuff, you're researching things, you're writing reports about stuff. How come you're not doing English? Well, I suppose we are. But they couldn't get over this thing of being in subjects, and exactly the same with these children you talk to. They really think in subject terms. That's what we've done to them, isn't it?
I guess that's right. The end of the year report is kind of, this is how you've done in this, and this, and there's kind of an overall kind of, and haven't you done well? You've made lots of friends and played nicely, kind of scenario. But I think if the whole scope of that was geared slightly differently, that it was much more about the child as a whole and how well they've done, with a little bit of focus then on how within certain subject areas it's helped, maybe that would change their influence. And my other thought is whether it actually makes any difference. If we understand that children think this way, it's if we can back far enough out to think either we've created it or whether that's just how they think. It's a little bit like the food scenario. I like to eat my peas, and then I like to eat my potatoes, and then I eat my, they like all that sort of separation of things, and maybe that's more of a child thing than I was aware of, but it's where being the teachers and the people in control of the environment come in, that if that is the case and that is how they think, as long as we're creating the environment and the structure for all of these things to come in, we can then just with our language start to sort of, like you say, seep in the fact that you might not think you've done any English today, but actually, as you just said, you've just done some research and written about something that you've been working on, or, you have been doing that because I've just asked you to go and buy something for me, and you've done a whole load of stuff related to money and that kind of thing. So I'm still sort of slightly unsure as to how much that matters. As long as a school and as a teacher you understand it, I think maybe it's fine. But actually, it's a difficult one to really get over, I think.
I think it's partly to do with the fact that we don't talk about it. We as professionals, we still talk. We design a curriculum, we design a timetable or a schedule that's for children and for staff, which is in subject divisions. We talk about different subjects all the time. There's nothing wrong with that, and children do like to make sense of their world, but we don't actually help them to make sense of their world by talking about the different projects as different ways of learning. We don't necessarily explain that this is English and maths and science all happening at the same time most of the time, that's why children don't get that. They're perfectly capable of understanding that. It was quite clear from the children that you talked to there. They were very perceptive, and they had a clear understanding of what was going on. Some of them in most detail. I was fascinated by was it Katie or Jodie who had an absolutely fascinating detailed classroom plan.
Yes.
Said, I couldn't believe all these different sections that were being set up. Not at all divisive or worrying. And then we put all the special needs children there because we know that they're special needs. And as a teacher, you think, oh gosh, I've got to be very careful about this. But they're quite straightforward and upfront about children, understand totally what's going on and don't need to be confused into thinking about stuff in a different way. Just be upfront with them and explain that this is a project, but it's a cross-curricular project. It's about everything, and they will get the message. And if you were able to talk to children that had that input, perhaps they would reflect that back. I think they're getting the cross-curricular stuff. It's just not being talked about as cross-curricular.
I think that's true. Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And also from a business point of view and an education system that's helping business and the workforce, is the fact that actually we don't necessarily need to change everything in order for it to be better, because as you said, these project ideas are exactly what businesses are like. You don't, or unless you're a completely sort of self-employed person that does everything, and even then I'd hope you manage to outsource some things. You're involved in an ongoing business with lots of different departments, lots of different things happening. And it's good to be involved in lots of these things to understand them. But, as a musician, I would be involved in the musical or the artistic side of what a project might be, whereas someone who's very academic and enjoys writing or copywriting and that sort of thing might be more focused on that. But you're still part of the bigger picture. You're still part of a cog, or one of the cogs in an ongoing thing, and understanding that all these things happen together, and that your individuality is really important, and what you bring is all those skills that you have. And that's what I've been hearing in business, that people are really looking for. It's that understanding that how you fit in with this organisation and what you can bring to the party, which is a really important thing.
And it is to do with that dialogue that you talked about when you were talking about assessment. It's about dialogue. If we set up that dialogue and talk about things, then people have a much greater understanding. It doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of information. I remember I did a book many, many years ago with a lovely lady called Noreen Wetson, and one of the ideas that she had was about raising self-esteem. And we talked a lot about what happens when children leave school at the end of the afternoon, and they run up to their parents, and their parents always say, "What have you done today?" And they say, "Oh, nothing." or we played a bit, or I had a fight, or whatever it is. And there's been a whole day's worth of work gone into that child, and the teachers are saying, "But hang on, tell them about the exciting stuff we did." And it's quite interesting, because if you see a child meet up with their parents with a teacher there, the teacher would prompt them and tell them and say all those things, and the parents would be amazed. And parents often don't realise, especially parents who don't go into schools much and don't interact with schools, they don't know all the stuff that goes on in schools, the exciting things that happen. So we devised this thing where we'd get the children to roll up the day, where they would, at the end of the day, just before going home time, we would say to the children, "Okay, well, let's roll everything up. What have you done today?" And we'd get children to put different hats on. Who's been wearing the hat of a scientist today? Who's been wearing a mathematician's hat? Who's been wearing an archaeologist's hat? Who's been wearing a spaceman's hat? All those things. And it just got the children thinking about what they've been doing. And then when they went out into the playground to meet mum or dad, they would say, "Oh, I was an archaeologist today." And then that starts the conversation, isn't it? It's very little things that can make a difference in that respect.
I think that's absolutely true, and it is language, and it is understanding, and I always think, I look back to my school years, and you do the things you have to do because you have to be there, and I guess that's part and parcel, and it is the people, when they start lighting the fire, they start to understand. But I sort of think, after I left school and I was suddenly sort of working on my own and being self-employed, I thought, actually, the skills that I've learned are really important. The ability to be able to write a CV or be able to write a letter, or I needed to start doing spreadsheets because I was organising musicians to be part of an ensemble or a theatre work. And I thought those skills were really important, but all of a sudden they really meant something to me, because I was thinking as a musician and using the skills that I had that were related to the work that I was doing, and then it became important. Just sitting down doing a spreadsheet because today's learning about spreadsheets is less important in my eyes, certainly as a child when you were learning those sorts of things. So actually that's why I always like the whole project idea. There is a certain amount of learning you have to do. You can't just be thrown in at the deep end necessarily, but it is, like you say, it's just shifting the perception of these things and making it more relevant to your day-to-day life earlier, I think, or certainly the understanding of what that is earlier on.
Yeah, you should have been in my class, Mark, because I would have explained to you that the reason that we'd have talked about the whole reason for why we're in school, and I would explain that the reason that I'm there is because I get paid, and the reason that you're there is also because you get paid. You just get paid in a different currency.
Yeah,
I get paid in money, but you get paid in learning, and the more work that you do, the more you learn, and it is dead easy. It's actually, you're going to get out what you put in. And it's a really simple concept, and it would have shifted your thinking a little bit, I think, if you'd listened.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I had that conversation recently with Katie. We were chatting about things, and it's just that, also that perception that it doesn't. You're not going to have necessarily, massive breakthroughs every day. It's more about the small things. It's the little
Yeah,
bit of, the 10 minutes of this, the half an hour of that. Because if you think where you are today and you look back at, and you look forward in a year's time and then look back to where you are and all the things that you've learned, it didn't happen overnight. It is literally just the drip, 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 building on all those skills, all that learning that you've done over time. And then, Katie's just going into her final year of primary now. If she looks back at where she was when she was 4, when she started, it's an amazing amount of knowledge and understanding and growth. And part of that's a natural thing as well. But also, if she hadn't gone to school, you wouldn't have any of that, and that's a really important thing for them to understand. And I hope feel grateful for, that opportunity, because there are plenty of people still in the world who are just striving to have the opportunity for that sort of thing, and that's not so easy for them.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that the total sidetracking that happened at the end when you talk to Wally about education generally, and moved on into the Industrial Revolution. But I just want to go back a touch, because he did mention about tests, and you talked earlier about tests and assessment with children, and it was interesting how much more the children liked tests and exams. One of them, I think it was Dalton actually, who said, "Oh, I love exams."
Yeah.
And you think, what's wrong with you? Because those of us in education who are trying to get assessment to be a positive thing rather than the onus that the government placed upon it of being something which measures children and schools particularly, getting this dialogue going, getting it to be a more natural approach, which some of the children were describing. But even Wally had talked about how useful tests are and how we need to measure progress. But then he went on to say, yeah, but why do we have to have them? Can't we just make a judgment? And I think you were also reflecting this as well. It's teachers know how well children are performing. They know with almost a degree of accuracy which is phenomenal about how well children are doing. And if you have a conversation with that child's parents and with that child about their performance and how well they're doing, it's easy to put that into words. To write it down as an A or a B or a C or a number, what does that mean? What does that mean? And my very first class that I taught, I had this conversation with them. These were some couple of very articulate children, and they were very upset with me because I was writing comments on their work rather than giving them a grade. And we had a long conversation about what an A means and what a C means, and what does it actually mean. Does it mean more than me saying this is really good, but you've got a problem there, or I love this, and you should do more of it? Which is more important? And they came into my way of thinking in the end.
Yeah,
it took a while.
and sort of on that idea, we've got 2 children in secondary school as well, and they seem to be starting the whole GCSE thing slightly earlier now. It's like sort of 2 years and then the exam year, for whatever the psychology of that is. And I can see it from the school's point of view in terms of time and also not wasting a year where kids are just learning things which they're not interested in. But that's sort of by the by. But the interesting thing was that we were having dinner the other night and we were chatting about this, and so said, "Oh yeah, they've one particular class, well, I can't remember exactly the reason, but they'd done one of their GCSEs a year early, and I think it might have been part of the English exam.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, this particular person, he got." I can't remember what the mark was, but he was 1 mark away from it, what would have been an A star or an A. And the whole feeling of the fact that, not that the mark he got, which was fantastic, but if he got 1 extra mark, he would have been a different person because he would have got a different grade. And that just seems ridiculous because the actual reality is exactly the same. He did incredibly well, but because all this information and you sort of think that, what would your life look like if you just had that 1 extra mark? I mean, it just seems bizarre, but it really does affect people.
Yeah, and it affects children more than anybody else, I think. I was talking to somebody the other day, a youngster who'd just done GCSEs, and he was saying, oh yeah, I got 8 C's or whatever it was, but it was enough to get me into sixth form, and that's all I wanted. And I said, yeah, and in fact, the reality is, however important that seems to you at the moment, in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, when you're working, very few people look at the grades you got at GCSE level. It just doesn't happen, does it?
Absolutely.
They don't even look at what your degree was. As long as you've got a degree, they're quite happy usually. And
yeah, absolutely.
And yet we get so bound up with this, don't we? Of the levels and the marks and all the rest of it. Actually, what we should be saying is, do you know this stuff? Yes, I do. Well, tell me about it. That's the way of judging, it seems to me.
And that's exactly what you're going to do in the workforce. It's that kind of, Can you do this? Yes, you can. Great. If you can't, let's go and learn about it, and then we can incorporate it into what we're doing. And it's that continual growth, isn't it?
We are the revolution, Mark. You realise that, don't you?
Yes, indeed.
And talking of which, let's go back to the Industrial Revolution. I thought that was fascinating when you were talking to Wally about and talking about that, because I wrote a little piece a while ago talking about teacher training and about how teacher training now with the school direct system is going back to Victorian times. It's going back to the model with the apprentice teacher, the 14-year-old teacher, a child who stayed in school and became an apprentice to the teacher, and then eventually became a teacher. Mm-hmm. That changed and became, went into a training system in the 1930s, I think 20s, 30s, and then went through into the sort of model that you and I would recognise of training and teachers becoming degree holders now. But it's now gone to the point where lots and lots of teachers are being trained back in school because they're closing down the Department of Education, and the government are insisting that teachers are better trained in school. I recognise that there are some elements of that are really valuable, and they do get good experience if they're lucky enough to be in a school where they get that good experience, and they don't have too many classes where it's too difficult. But it's the background knowledge that's now lacking, which was why teachers moved out of the apprentice model in the first place, to go into college and go to university to learn all the background stuff that we have about education. So that's fascinating. And I thought that your reflection of the way in which children were being educated, being dependent upon some arbitrary system dating back from then, there has been a specific move to go back to that in this country with training. And that links into what you're talking about, vocational education. It's so important, isn't it? That people do learn to do the work that they're going to do at an appropriate age.
I think. Sorry, I was just going to say. I think that is true, but I think the other thing is, and this came across as well, was the fact that how all these different parts of your learning affect you as a child, and also how it does depend on who you are and where you're living. I was thinking more about lots of the children had said about things that they learnt that weren't in school. I do X, Y, and Z, but that's kind of the sort of thing that I talk to about with my parents or the people at home, rather than things that I learnt about in school. And that might be about sort of life cycles, or some of them talked about savings and money and that kind of thing. That seems to be something which, with pocket money and those sorts of things, might be something they did at home, but maybe less at school. And it just made me think, I was at the beginning of this season thinking much more about that, education is in place because we don't want to homeschool our children. So therefore, all the really important things that we'd hope that they would learn during this important time of their life, school are covering and supported by parents and that kind of thing, because they're also children who don't necessarily have that support at home as well. That's kind of, it's having that sort of chance to stop everyone just falling through the cracks. But it did seem to me that the reality is that the parental side of it is really, really important, because there are whole parts of of their lives which actually they're not covering in school. And I was beginning to think that maybe, from a parent's point of view as well, I was sort of thinking, well, actually, maybe you just have to allow schools to be what they are. They work in a certain way at the moment, and as we've talked about, we might like that to be different, but actually being a bit more of having a reality check of kind of, well, that is how it is, and actually my job as a parent is to sort of try and make sure that those other bits of learning are actually put in from our point of view, and how we can encourage that. And so it's much more of a hand-in-hand approach between parents and schools. And that might be an easier way for things to develop. But I think what the missing link from that would be, assuming that you've got a great home life and you've got a great school, is the relationship between the parents and the school, and how you can work together. If the school's saying, I haven't got time to do X, Y, and Z, but we know this is covered at home, how you can then sort of amalgamate those two things together. And I think that's a really challenging thing, but would be a really important thing.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that combination of what happens, but the difficulty for schools is and perhaps the difficulty for the system is that you need to put in a sort of minimum requirement, and that's what schools are doing, and that's what I think we moved away from that minimum requirement. In the 50s, 60s, particularly 60s, 70s, and on. Teachers, as they became more educated, realised how much more they could be doing for children, and how much we could be doing for society, and that was before it was. Schools were being told, you must do this because this is the minimum requirement, and it sort of shrunk back a bit to that minimum requirement, because there is, without doubt, a lack of that parental commitment in a great many cases, and so there will be children. If you want there to be an equal playing field, you can only make the school bit the equal playing field. It's very difficult to provide for all children from their parents, because they get different experience.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, really. So, as a whole, as the season as a whole, what other sort of takeaways did you come away from, and were you sort of anything you were surprised about that you weren't necessarily expecting to hear?
I think I think there was a phrase in there which I thought was very revealing, and it was in the interview with Katie and Jodie, and I'm not quite sure which one of them said it, and it was in a slightly different context, but one of them said, it's not our place. And I thought, that's such a Victorian attitude, isn't it?
Mm.
And I thought that they already have an idea of what their place is in society. I think they were talking about, it's not our place to go and interfere with somebody if they're not feeling very happy or something like that, unless they want us to. I think that's what she was saying.
I think that might be right, yeah.
But it struck me as, it's not our place, was just like a line out of Dickens, wasn't it? We all know our place. And I thought, goodness gracious. And then when you went on to the Industrial Revolution, that came back to haunt me. It just, it was so revealing. The whole idea of how we haven't moved. It's true in so many respects, isn't it? We haven't moved in classroom design. You go into a primary classroom nowadays, you go into a secondary classroom nowadays, it could be a classroom from 50 years ago, 40 years ago anyway. It hasn't changed. Very little has changed in the majority of classrooms. We have a curriculum which hasn't changed, exactly as you're saying. And we have in a lot of places still an arbitrary system of, in this country, children changing school at 11. Well, it's totally arbitrary. There's no reason why they should change schools at 11. There's no educational reasons for that. So we are very slow moving in education in a lot of ways. We're very quick to respond in a lot of other ways, but it would be good from my perspective. It would be good if there was the opportunity for people to think about these things, to talk about these things exactly as you and I are doing now, and explore the possibilities. there are possibilities, and when people have time to think about them, then things do move forward, and you get exciting people who are able to push these things forward and push the ideas forward if we give them the chance.
I think you're right, and I think time was one of the things that came through for me from this season, is the fact that there isn't any time. There isn't time for the children to reflect. Every minute of every day is kind of just timetable to the hilt, and actually you need that time, and especially in the holidays. It's that kind of, you have time for everything to seep in and reflect, and for you to grow and recuperate. And I think, as we start to talk more about sort of well-being and children's general health and that sort of thing, I think that would be a really important thing to do. And also, the other thing that struck me is that the things that children do in school and their perspective, their sort of ideas of what that is. I like doing this particular club, but it's before school or after school. Whether it's a dancing thing or a football thing, it makes quite a big difference. That is so that your perspective is that actually I'm learning all the time, and it's part of the fabric of my learning, and that comes down really to the whole feeling of things as well. The schools have just gone back now, and Katie's got a World War II topic this term, and so you have to sort the outfit out, and they're going all dressed up and all that sort of thing. But the thing that I was slightly concerned about was the fact that she was concerned she might get into trouble because maybe not everything she was wearing was authentic. and
she wouldn't do.
no, absolutely. But it's just that, where does that feeling coming from? Why do you think that you would get into trouble for something like that? That must come from somewhere. You're not thinking I'm as free as a bird and I'm just here expressing myself, and every child will come in whatever version of an outfit they can to hopefully enjoy the immersion, which is what this sort of next few days is all about. And I just wonder where that comes from, where that, why children feel that they might get into trouble or something. I can understand it. If I know that I'm going to go and actually punch someone in the classroom, then I'm going to expect to get into trouble, because that's not a good thing to do. But just expressing yourself or just being part of something new, why you think you would get into trouble for that just slightly concerns me in terms of what they believe school is like, and the right, where that sort of line of right and wrong is, and therefore being in trouble.
And you will know, because of talking to her and talking to her siblings and talking to the school and visiting the school, that there isn't an issue there, that she wouldn't have got into trouble for.
Absolutely.
it. And it is even talked about, about the values, guarantee that the school's values are talked about in assemblies and so on. The children know what, all those things. It is odd how those perceptions grow. However, the things I would say, I do hope that you supported Katie by giving her all your Second World War music that you actually collected when you early in your career. Because I seem to recall you did a Second World War musical.
We absolutely did. Yeah. We did a whole production of that sort of thing, and that's one of the things I'll be speaking to them about. And although they've not been particularly interested in my musical expertise, sadly. But so this might be another step too far of sticking my nose in, which would be sad. But I do have an entire project. Yes.
I've got a play they can have. I thought the good things that came out of that were how perceptive the children were, how much they understood what was going on actually, despite these little things like you just described, where they have this misplaced idea of where authority lies and that sort of thing, perhaps. But I thought they were so perceptive. They were compliant to the extreme, it seemed to me. In all cases, they were quite happy to go along with what they were being told to do. Yeah. And in schools, see, that's a good thing. That makes life a lot easier, and to have those perceptive children. So the potential there is phenomenal. That's what I saw in your children that you interviewed, was so much potential for so many great things to happen. And I just hope that some of those things creep out of them.
I think they will, and I think the biggest takeaway of all those things is, like we said, it's about time and it's about environment and also the dialogue and as you said about making them understand that how all of these things fit together and the reality of how they fit into what they've learnt as opposed to what they might just then regurgitate. And that kind of end of the school day is a classic example, isn't it? I've done nothing, and we all know that's not the case, and I'm going to get into trouble. That's not the case. So it's how we frame it, it's how we put it together, and how we make it part of how we want to explain our day or our year or our life at school. And I think that's probably the skills that as teachers we can really, if we're mindful about those things, we don't need, and this is the exciting thing I like about the podcast, is that we don't necessarily need to have a completely new curriculum, which we might think would enhance what we're doing. And the children are so perceptive about what's going on. Just the way we talk to them, just the way that we can understand where they're coming from, and hopefully what we would have learned over these few episodes will just give us a bit of an insight into that. And I think big changes can happen just by those small things, and also taking a little bit of comfort in the fact that actually it's very easy to always be on the case of we'd like it to be different, but actually there's a lot of great stuff going on. And more than that, the children are in a good place, and they are learning both at school and at home and finding their way in the world. And I think we can really support them to thrive as we are.
Yeah, and I think if the one word, if people can take out of this whole season, the one word which they could take out is for children to be happy.
Yes,
that is so important. And if we can achieve that, if people can achieve that in school, in primary schools particularly, I think that they will have achieved great things.
I think that's right, and I think that's the perfect place to leave it, because that is the key to everything, and everything can stem from there. So, Peter, thanks so much for your time again and your great insights as always. We'll look forward to chatting to you again in season 4 when we can really get stuck into the arts and music and all those great things which I know you really pushed in your school. So and we can chat about that a bit further.
Lovely, thanks, Mark.
Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.